family, they love you. They just love you. And my mother loves you. I send these segments to her because she thinks you're a fighter. How tall are you?
5'5".
Okay, no, my mother's 5 feet. She's like, I think I can tell she got, she has the same fight. I love it. I said, oh yeah, she's got the fight. My mother said, if there's not a fight, I'll start one. I love it. It's like my poor mom. My mother's crazy, bless her heart. But we're gonna come up and Lord help me. Let's just get through this. Okay. Hey Bernadette, how you doing, sweetie? Like and share, like and share, like and share. Thank you so much, Bernadette. We will be up in 10. Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's a joy to be with you always. It's an honor just to be able to share this time and space with you. We've got a lot to talk about today. It just seems like this Charlie Kirk story continues to evolve, and it is reverberating in our society throughout the culture in ways that we could not have imagined. So many Americans had not heard of him, and yet so many of our young people were captivated by him. And now we're seeing Black college students at historically Black colleges and universities, who are afraid to leave their dorms to go to class. At the beginning of the week, they were on lockdown because, as the president, the vice president, and others are calling out the left, including Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, that felt the fallout is being absorbed by Black college students in part. It is soiling the political discourse. We had two Black young men, one who was a Delta State University student with broken limbs, who were lynched on Monday. They said there's no foul play. I don't know how you can hang yourself with broken arms, but there we go. So this is spreading. And then if you listen to the hurt and the pain online, it is very real. It is very real. The death of this young man has penetrated very, very deeply, but the misinformation around his death, because there's still so much that we don't know, everybody. There's a lot that we just don't know. And we're hearing a lot of people say, make this make sense to me, because a lot of what we're being told is just not lining up with the facts. So we need to talk about this, and really the political violence that has been stoked, that is being stoked. We didn't have this kind of reaction to the killings in Minnesota when the Speaker Emerita of your house was murdered, she and her husband. The president did not even give them a call. Think about that. Did not even think of giving the governor a call. Think about that. What are we doing here? What are we doing? We need to talk about this. We need to talk about this. And of course, uh, our thoughts and prayers go out to the Kirk family. Of course, a husband has been lost, a father has been lost, a son has been lost, and so has a brother. That having been said, I heard a Pastor Wesley out of Alexandria, Virginia, uh, say something this morning, Colleen Rowley, that really shook me to my core. He said, let us be very clear as we mourn the death of this human being. Uh, the fact that you died does not redeem, your death does not redeem how you lived. There were a lot of things that were said in his lifetime that were very hurtful and that were untrue about a lot of people. And I think we need to take all of this apart. And now the Boston Globe is in hot water because they said in their editorial that we need more Charlie Kirks. People are very upset about that. And they said, look, what we meant was we needed some people who would enter into the political discourse in a non-hostile way, which, quite frankly, he did do. He did do. But he said a lot of painful, hurtful things with a smile. So let's unpack some of this, because it's the political violence that is being stoked at this moment that I think we need to step back and unpack. And I tell you, Colleen Rowley, who's really part of the family on this show, the famed FBI whistleblower, this brilliant lawyer, who's I've pulled her away from a brief that she's writing right now. But I said, I've got to talk with her about, and we want to hear from her about what's happening here, because this case is reverberating. And, and I think maybe it's also just the time, the zeitgeist. It's the spirit of the times, Colleen Rowley. Everything is up in the air. So you tell me, what do you make of this? And now Tyler Robinson, the accused killer, we don't know if he has done it. He's being charged with the death penalty. And we're still trying to figure out how he did it, because when one looked at the video, and you could not help but see it, because initially people just put it out there because they put it out there on their phones. You said only a trained marksman could have done this. Someone who could have fired one bullet across thousands of people underneath a tent, and the perfect kill shot. It's a horrible thing. So you got to help me to understand, where are we? Because, you've talked about the bombs that we drop overseas exploding at home, and
yep,
you've said that. What are we looking at?
Well, I got a few thoughts here, and I'm hard pressed to know even where to start, but I have for quite a while now been writing and warning against the violence blowing back on the United States from this constant message that's been used at least since 9/11, that war is the answer, perpetual war. And so because on a national level, war is our answer, killing, actually it's 5 million people that have been killed. So at least 5 million that have been killed since 9/11, as, our answer to 9/11. And now it's, as our answer to the fact that we're trying to can't compete economically with China. So we got to go to war with China. That's next on the horizon, Iran. So I've been warning about this even since I actually warned FBI Director Mueller before we went to war with Iraq, because I said it does not correspond at all to the fact that bin Laden, who was an enemy of Saddam Hussein, they were enemies. So we went to war on a country that was an enemy of Al Qaeda. It made no sense at all. And yet 70% of the country was manipulated into believing that killing well over 1 million Iraqis was somehow going to fix the problem of being attacked on 9/11. Well, here's what I think also. Rahm Emanuel, who I had the great displeasure of having to meet with 4 times in 2005 and 2006, because I was running for Congress here. And all he cared about was getting money, millions of dollars. That's all he cared about. But he said something that is a very much a key window into what you said is the reverberation. And I'm going to go a step further and say it's exploitation of the Charlie Kirk murder. Is that Rahm Emanuel, and you know what? It's pretty much everyone accepts this in political strategy. It's accepted. He said, don't let any catastrophe go to waste. Now think about that. Don't let any catastrophe go to waste. So Charlie Kirk's murder, horrible, sad. You're right. It's emotionally traumatizing to even see him get shot and then to see his family. It's very similar. The only thing is we're getting a little desensitized to mass murder in the United States, because Minnesota just had five more people were shot yesterday in Minnesota. And I think it's a drive-by shooting at a bus stop. That was yesterday. Not too long before, not just a day before, they had the funeral for the 10-year-old who was shot through the window of her school, and along with many other kids. That was just already not even 2 weeks ago. The funeral was just held. And then you don't have to go too far back to see Bolter, crazed, whatever you want to call him, guy shooting both Hortman and her husband and Senator Hoffman and his wife and daughter. Yes. Okay. So that's just in our state, and that's just in the last couple months. So, the killing, a horrible killing of Charlie Kirk, unfortunately, I'm sorry to say, this is what's happening now. When Bolter had the shootings of Hortman and Hoffman's, I wrote a piece about a week later trying to explain this to people. Bolter was not, you really couldn't call it political motivation. It was a senseless, most of these, and I will even say Charlie Kirk. I don't think Charlie Kirk's is properly categorized as a political assassination or murder. I know maybe somebody would disagree, because if the guy was mad, if the killer gets mad for a political reason, trans issues or whatever, maybe a variety of issues, but they call it political. But frankly, it is senseless. It's not that terribly different than the so-called involuntary celibates who have conducted a series of mass murders. The famous one is the guy out in Montana. He stabs the very pretty blonde co-eds, stabs them all to death. And the reason, when people, well, what was his motive? He didn't even know them. And his motive is that there's a group of people, and they're mad. They're mad because they have a hard time getting dates. And they call themselves involuntary celibates. And they start online. Sometimes they meet up in groups, and they more or less incite each other. Oh, it's unfair to me. I'm 20 some years old and I want to have a girlfriend. And they end up doing this. That, by the way, that is not a motive. That is not a motivation. The people who we used to call it going postal, when someone at the post office, their boss was mean to them or said, you know what, you have to take on a harder mail route or something, they get mad and they take a gun and shoot up their colleagues and their coworkers at the post office. And that's a long time ago. The Columbine shooters, who are militarized, first of all, and they decide that how can this be an answer to being bullied? Even if you're bullied in school, they were bullied, apparently. There's a lot of people, by the way, that they call that the motive. If you're bullied in a school situation, then you come back with a gun. You're mad at your teachers. You're mad at I'm telling you, this is senseless violence. And it's the reason this is important to understand why so many people now in our country, to the point where it's an epidemic of mass killing, not just shooting, because people are doing it by driving trucks into crowds. They're killing by stabbing with knives, and they're killing with bombs in their cars, even if you all go all the way back to the Oklahoma bombing with McVeigh and whatever. There's different ways. It's not just shooting. However, there are shootings too, but I try to explain why, and you never hear the news, by the way. You never hear mainstream news ask that question. Mm-hmm. Why are we having, there are some professors who are studying how violence blows back, how Martin Luther King and Jesus, I mean, the smartest people that have existed have realized that senseless violence does not solve any problem. Even if you have a political gripe, even if you are mad, even if you are legitimately mad about something, going to shoot them up does not solve that problem. And in fact, if you look at the Iraq War, it makes the situation worse. Going to war and killing the civilians of a country that had nothing to do with 9/11. Why? Because you got your opportunity. And this is going to tie in now with what we're seeing with the exploitation of Charlie Kirk's murder. When an opportunity appears, and you do have a Rahm Emanuel type, I shouldn't say him personally, but a Rahm Emanuel type, and Netanyahu falls into that category now because Charlie Kirk was starting to question Israel's genocide. We're getting this from many sources now. He was having new, the good thing I'm going to say, I'm very sad about this murder for a lot of reasons. One reason is that Charlie Kirk, you said it, he was quite good on free speech. So he would at least let people ask questions. He did start to have different viewpoints on his show. He was on with Tucker Carlson, where they were discussing a couple of issues that actually transcend partisanship, like Russiagate and other things. And so his killing is very sad because they're using his murder to exploit hatred. That's being used now with the name calling, the firing of people for just saying their own opinions and free speech. They fired, I think it's actually at least hundreds of people now have been fired in their workplaces. Teachers, a lot of teachers.
Well, Karen Shaya, I mean, the only Black editorial writer at the Washington Post, she said, killing a human being, killing him was horrible. But let me tell you about his record. And they fired her, no questions asked. They pushed her out. And they're doing that all over the country.
Well, if you think about it, using a really, really sad and horrible murder of someone who was beloved by a big segment of the population to incite further polarization, to incite further hatred, for your own political gain. And so, Trump has been warned. He's, everyone knows that there are wiser voices telling him, don't do this, because all you're doing is asking for more trouble. And of course, they all know, don't let a catastrophe go to waste. And if my polls are low, I can now use Charlie Kirk's martyrdom as something to boost me. And I think that's what's going on with a lot of people. And in fact, Charlie Kirk was very much a mixed bag. I agree. By the way, he was when Tucker Carlson had Charlie Kirk on his show. They were talking about Russiagate and how the Steele dossier, a Steele dossier that the CIA leader Brennan, the FBI director Comey, all lied about, completely lied about, to use it for their political gain, by the way. And in fact, the result of it was, this is probably one of the reasons that set the stage for the war with Russia. So all a lie. Russiagate was from the start to the end, nothing but lies. And I appreciate the fact that Charlie Kirk was able to tell, and Tucker Carlson were able to give that out to their audience and tell people about that. There were other things that, and like I said, Charlie Kirk, even at the end, not at the beginning of his shows, but at the end, he was becoming more questioning of Israel lobby's power, and he was becoming more questioning that this genocide should not maybe be going on. And wait. They always want to co-opt. By the way, Charlie Kirk's no different, but when you have a big audience, the powerful donors will seek to co-opt you. And they were trying to.
The reports are saying that. I mean, because he was platforming people who were raising the questions, and he was under fire for that. And you help make that make sense to me, because no one corporate media are not talking about that at all. And that was a real, I mean, and if you just look at his the last 2 or 3 months of his life, he was leaning in on that.
Well, if you are, I'm not a, what's the word? They call them influencers. And the people who have, millions of people in their reading and podcast audiences, they are having to, if their audience itself is starting to change its views, what do you do if you're the person with the microphone and a lot of backlash is coming at you saying, oh, but killing children, How can you say that this is not a genocide when the 100 children were killed today and whatever? So people are the polls themselves now are showing that that there's a change of heart amongst Charlie Kirk's mostly Republican audience. And also he had some very close associates with other former Fox hosts like Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Clayton Morris. And those former Fox people and they were on they helped elect
Megyn
Trump.
Kelly.
They support Trump, but they're trying to advise Trump. And this is from a standpoint of don't do something wrong and stupid. Netanyahu is trying to make you, be complicit in this genocide. He's trying to have you support bombing of Iran and say the law doesn't matter. We can drop bombs on boats off of Venezuela. There's a lot of you mentioned Miller, and there are some voices in Trump's close entourage, and maybe Netanyahu is one of the absolute worst, I'm sorry to say, but he's in there's Trump's close entourage, and they are leading him astray. Really, really astray. Now, the problem is we're all victims of that because he's the president and he's doing these illegal things. However, there are people really trying hard to tell the administration and to restrain them from some of these worst abuses. And Charlie Kirk, towards the end, it looks like he was kind of on the line. People were telling him, hey, you know what? This is wrong, blah, blah, blah. And he had interview guests on that told him this. And I think that he got afraid himself because he knows the millions of dollars that are being pumped in. I don't know the exact amount, but from the start,
when 40 to 80 million.
40 to 80 million.
And he had just turned down, according to press reports, a mass infusion of cash from Netanyahu.
Yeah, they work through their proxies in the United States are the Israel lobby. People like Adelson and Haim Sabin, and there's a bunch of them. Oh, now Larry Ellison, considered just a day ago the most wealthy person in the world. He just bought CBS. And he put the very top Zionist blogger in charge of CBS, Barry Weiss. Okay, so those people have huge amounts of money. And yes, you know what? Money talk. What do we always say? Money talks. In the FBI, when it came to corruption, we always said, follow the money. And that's the problem is if you are taking money from sources that are forcing you to go one way, you are in a very precarious situation. The best thing to do is not to accept big, huge amounts of money from any source. If there's a way that you can ask your readers to subscribe and whatever, that's probably the best way to handle it. But when you take big lumps of money from sources and they have very serious, terribly wrongful, illegal, unconstitutional agendas, I would be, if I was Charlie Kirk, I would have been afraid as well. Obviously, you can't not be afraid to find yourself in this kind of a situation. And so now, and then of course, the thing is, he tried to promote an image, whether he was successful at it, but he tried to promote an image of encouraging free speech. And then you get this complete paradox right now where his murder is being used to suppress dissent, fire people who even are factually, you can't even say a fact right now out loud because Pam Bondi will call it hate speech. And the hate speech, I will say that hate speech does play a role. Hate speech right now is dangerous because it doesn't take too much. When people think, Bolter, the guy that shot Gabby Giffords, the Columbine. I mean, I don't even know this long list of crazy Cook, not Cook, the guy that Crook, I guess his name, the young kid who tried to assassinate Trump and killed other people. Even the guy who was waiting in the golf course to shoot Trump. I mean, I don't even know where to begin. There's so many fragile, emotionally fragile people right now that hate speech type propaganda can set them off. And again, I don't think this is a motive. I think when they then come to the conclusion, oh, if I just shoot, like, let's say the guy in the golf course, I forget his name, who was he was a liberal of some sort waiting in the golf course, but that was not it's not a motivation. It's not a motive. He's like, he gets mad. And here's the funny thing. How the heck would your problem be solved by shooting the president? It doesn't make much sense. You know what? Look at killing of John F. Kennedy. Did that, even if you were hateful, if you were a person who didn't like what John F. Kennedy was doing in Vietnam or something, I don't know how that would have been any kind. It's almost like 9/11 in Iraq. It has no relevancy or applicability to solving your problems. Kohlberger stabbing the very pretty blonde co-eds has no ability to solve his problem. None. Shooting your post office colleagues. You get a bad grade in school and you go shoot your By the way, these have all happened. All happened and continuing to happen. We have mass violence in this country. And I think the real root cause is not any particular political motivation. It's not. It's the reasons why people get mad and then shoot others it's so common, even for getting cut off in traffic. A car goes in front of you, you get mad at them, you pull your gun out and shoot. They call it what's it called? Traffic something.
Road rage.
A road rage. I think road rage is a great example because it shows you how senseless. That's not a motive. Road rage, they didn't put their blinker on, so I'm mad at them and I shoot them. These things that are just multiplying across the board, there is a root cause. And the root cause is after 9/11, when we decided that we had to be in perpetual war in an all-volunteer military. That means that you have to desensitize people from little boys and pushing the violent video games, Call of Duty. By the way, that's why the Newtown shooting in Massachusetts, the Newtown, that kid just grew up playing video games and shooting. He goes to a first grade class and shoots all the first graders.
But let me ask you this, because this goes to what you have been talking about, because I see you as a woman of peace and you fast for it, you fight for it. This is something that you've dedicated your life to. Dr. King talked about a society that spends more money on militarism. And if you defund the Great Society, the programs where we feed people, send people to schools, keep people healthy, open up hospitals, et cetera, et cetera. He said, we are headed towards spiritual death.
Yes.
And that this is the greatest. It broke his heart to concede, to recognize, and then to have to concede that the greatest purveyor of violence in the world at that time, and it appears today, is still the United States, which is because you said, and it struck me, you said, and it resonated with what Dr. King used to say, that the bombs that we drop overseas, you said they're exploding right here, which is what you're giving us this chapter and verse, Colleen Rowley. Help me to understand this, because it seems like it's a cancer. I mean, because even to make this, the killing of Charlie Kirk, like you said, it is to make it about right and left. No. That's not what this is. And so to see to have now they're finally reporting at least one of the hangings in Mississippi. Trey Reed, 21 years of age, a student at Delta State University, broken limbs. They found them at 7 o'clock in the morning on Monday. At the same time, they have had to lock down these black kids at these HBCUs. I mean, all of this, and then you've got the vice president who hosted Charlie Kirk's podcast yesterday, and he's calling out the left. I said, this is so irresponsible. What do they want to have? A civil war down here? And it seems like that's what they're stoking. The violence.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So what do you see?
No, that's what, again, Rahm Emanuel, they're using a catastrophe for their own purposes and interests and political. And actually, yeah, it is for political purposes. When you're trying to create greater polarization and greater whatever, that's for purposes of control. And on Netanyahu, this is really applicable to Netanyahu, because Netanyahu in the United States, the polls, certainly the Democrats, I think it's like 65, 70% are very much opposed to any allowing further of the genocide. It's a little bit lower in the Republicans, but it's also going up.
But now, not with the kids. That's with Charlie Kirk's crew. 3/4 of them.
Yes,
according to the data, they're like, get out of there.
That's right. And there was actually, I didn't ever follow this other guy. I'd never heard of him, but I guess there was another guy. And I probably wouldn't have agreed. Maybe I didn't follow him for a reason because I didn't agree with most of what he said. But there was another guy, Nick Fuentes. Have you ever heard of him?
Yes, and one of my listeners, bless his heart, he wants me to get him on the show. He's from Chicago, just like Charlie Kirk was. I don't know how these folks are coming from the Midwest. What's up, Colleen? But go on.
But Nick Fuentes, you may not have agreed with other stuff, but he was criticizing. Kirk from the right, that he was being too appeasing of Israel. Mm-hmm. So you have, again, to call this political and make it right versus left, and this is not at all the case in the first place. But Netanyahu wants it to look like it's the case. He wants it to look that way. And that's why he pounced on this. He seized on it completely opportunistically. Of course, he well knows Rahm Emanuel's thing. And I'm going to use this for our purposes because we're losing support in the United States. And this might be a way where I can make everybody, through hatred, by the way, where they can't even listen to arguments of the other side. And it's completely, as a paradoxical thing, it's completely against what Charlie Kirk promoted as himself, listening and not, responding in a violence or whatever. And by the name, and Trump's being told, don't do this. He's being told, don't make it worse. We already are in a bad situation in the United States after 20 some years of constantly promoting that war and violence is the answer. The bombing of these people in what they say 7, 8, 10 countries now. Now Venezuela boats are the latest one. I mean, we're bombing with no due process, not even declaration of war. And, we as a people, it's hard not to get desensitized to it when we live here. And then you come up with your own problem, can be a whole variety of different things. They run the gamut of what your personal problem can be. And then you say, well, if I can't get a gun, it's not easy for me to gun. Maybe I'll rent the truck. And next time I see a marathon running in front of me, I'll just run right into them. And somehow that's going to solve my problems. I mean, I know this sounds insane when you say it in words like I'm trying to say it. But on a psychological, emotional level, when we've been barraged with that message that, we're so great that we're allowed to and we're the heroes. Okay, so I'm going to tell you something. Probably nearly every one of the mass shooters and mass killers somehow in their head, and this latest guy, maybe after a while they realized it wasn't true, but at the time they commit the act, they have themselves as being a hero. I know it sounds crazy, but that is how the psychology works. They believe, I mean, we had people shooting law enforcement officers. I can't remember. I've written 3 or 4 articles about this. My latest one is Daddy went to war last night. And that's what Bolter, the killer of the Hortmans and shooting the Hoffmans, he wrote this to his kids the next morning before he was even caught. Daddy went to war last night. There's no clearer indication of the connection between war is the answer to our national problems. So it's also the answer to my problems when I have a problem. I know it's really, and I will be a hero. And the other part of this is for doing these things, I will be the hero because many of, and we, if you lionize, and of course, lionizing killers, because you think they had a good cause or whatever. And there's different types of this, but any type of thing where you're giving an encouragement to suicidal/homicidal behavior, because it's well known, this is another part of the psychology, that when you reduce the bar down, when people say, my friend in school committed suicide because she broke up with her boyfriend. I'm breaking up with my boyfriend. Maybe I should. That's called copycat. And I know people say, well, no, that's stupid. No, it's a thing. We have to really, really prevent copycat violence. And, the wars and the fact that we've indoctrinated all these people to think killing, by the way, Miller and most of them, they're really hypocrites, because out of one side of their mouth, if they do say something about, we should, be careful, we should try to reduce the homicidal epidemic of mass homicide, whatever, they'll say that. And they'll go out of the other side of their mouth and say, well, there's nothing wrong with killing the babies because they're baby terrorists and they're shielding Hamas, etc. So some of the same people are contradicting themselves. The message has to be to try to reduce, because it has blown back on us. That same violence that we encourage in one breath, because we think it's our national interest to arm Ukraine and arm Israel and try to topple the Syrian president, and on and on and on. So you're doing propaganda and you're encouraging people, you're desensitizing people to murder. And that, frankly, that's how Israel, and you can even go back to Nazi Germany, this is how otherwise good people, the otherwise good Germans, allowed what happened in the World War II to happen. It's now, frankly, what's happening with a lot of Israelis. They have desensitized them to the worst. I mean, you can't even imagine what some of these people are saying. You can't even imagine about the killing of children and everything, and the really bad rationalizations for killing children and stuff. It's incredible. But guess what? When you start hearing this all the time, and now you are emotionally destabilized or get mad, and a lot of times it doesn't even last. I looked at the Timothy McVeigh. This goes way back, but during that time period, and by the way, they were military veterans. So in the military, so that's, I should say, one of the possible explanations. And this is not to cast aspersions on veterans, because I'm from a military family and whatever. But one of the reasons why former military veterans who have gone through the indoctrination process and rationalized the killing and shooting of foreign people in different conflict zones. Of course, now just killing people in boats, civilians in boats and everything else. It's gone even worse. If you were the person who dropped the bomb on the Venezuelan boat, you have to have in your head this notion that I'm doing the Lord's work, and this is what I've been told is make me a hero, whatever. I mean, it's still, it's very similar. But when McVeigh and Nichols, who came out of that environment, by the way, John Mohammed, the sniper, the DC sniper, same thing, sniper, came out of the same indoctrination. And this is an explanation for why they comprise a disproportionately high number of the mass killers right now.
Is that, would you attribute that to moral injury, which our friend Matt talks about coming out of the military? And mind you, I too, my mother's family, military family. And so, but you know, I wish we took the Peace Corps seriously, Colleen Rowley. I mean, I wish that we only equate service with war, not with peace. I mean, what does it say about us?
You know, the John F. Kennedy speech that a lot of people are trying to replay. There have been leaders in history, and they all many times are mixed bags too. John F. Kennedy was not a saint in other ways, whatever. But there have been leaders over history that at shining moments have really given the message that we need to listen to now. And this violence, again, it's devolved now into such senseless violence that it doesn't even make sense. And guess what? Charlie Kirk's senseless murder is now being used to increase further senseless murder. I mean, you can hardly, I know I get a little excited about this, but I mean, it's hard to even.
Well, why do you get excited? I mean, what is it? Why is this animating for you?
You know, I went to Sunday school, let's go back to moral injury. Moral injury is the fact that you thought, I was indoctrinated through Sunday school and through a lot of all of my background was thinking there's a difference between right and wrong. We're all sinners. We all make mistakes, but there is a difference. Murder is on the wrong side. Maybe in self-defense, yes, in self-defense that you can fight back or whatever. Perhaps in the FBI, our deadly force policy, if we were being attacked or an innocent person, then yes, you could fight back. However, when you start to see a situation where all of what you previously thought of ethics and law, and now it just is going up, and somebody says, no, that's not a problem. That's not a problem to murder the children in Gaza. That's not to bomb the boats, the Venezuelan boats. That's not a problem. Where are you a prude? Are you a prude? I mean, no, it's all might makes right. I mean, so we've gone from what we thought was the fact that we had a rule of law, that human beings had a sense of decency. And this is explaining moral injury. Because we grow up, usually, almost always, there's maybe some exceptions, but you grow up, usually most people instilled with at least a basic sense of decency. But when that gets turned around, and I will say that the Newtown shooter who went in and shot the first graders, he sat there addicted to Call of Duty, shooting people on a screen. And he got turned around completely. And you know what? And the indoctrination into our militarized thing, and it's not just the military veterans, it's all of us. It's all of us. We have to praise our, one example, American Sniper movie.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't sit through it, but I saw the first scene, and it's the American Sniper, and he's taking aim at a mother and a little boy. And I don't remember which one he shoots first. He's a sniper, and he's taking aim at a little boy and a mother. Maybe, I don't know what even his reason was, but he shoots one of them, and then the other one tries, and he shoots the other one. That's like the opening scene. And however that was engineered by the movie makers, they got audiences to applaud for the American Sniper.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and
Rambo,
again,
right?
this is what Hitler's propagandists were able to do. They were able, through very good ways to get into your mind, of turning you, frankly, into a monster. And and that happens to people. And guess what? If they ever whatever, it's moral injury. It is terrible moral injury. By the way, just to witness it. It doesn't even matter if you're personally involved. To witness this kind of thing, people have to be treated and get therapy when they're involved in violence. The kids at the school where their friends were shot. Guess what? They're getting therapy because it is so traumatic to be in those situations. Law enforcement who are involved in shootings get therapy, because this was really, really traumatic. How in the world, as a country, did we think that we could force our population to be subjected on a daily basis to encouraging bombing of people, genocide, starving of little children? How in the heck did we think that would lead to any beneficial results or interests of the United States? I don't understand that.
But I do, because, look, we tolerated slavery. You would have all of these people, Black people, who came out looking like the slave master. I mean, there are letters of our founding fathers and the men, and they were flawed, but they were great, who would go to Monticello and they sit with him, and they said this was the oddest home because we had white-looking people who were serving us while we were eating, and they looked just like Thomas Jefferson. I couldn't quite figure that out. Seriously, I mean, he took Sally Hemings to the White House with him. His former best friend, J.D. Callender, ran her out of town. Dusky Sally, that was a limerick that he put in his newspaper, which was the biggest newspaper in D.C. And you have all these iterations. Every time a Black person has a child in the United States today, as my mother said, it was chef's surprise. I didn't know what you all were going to look like because your genes come out, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm just saying, we've tolerated a lot. And I only have like 5 minutes or so here. I'm going to give them to you because I think that you're bringing up a lot of things that Bernadette says, look at Vietnam. People want us to delve more deeply into, Robert says, Rambo, delve more deeply into Maduro and Venezuela. Now Americans, Colleen, are asking a lot of questions. And there's such a disconnect between corporate media and what they touch and what Americans want to talk about. It's an absolute disconnect.
The person who brought up Rambo, the movies, yes. I mentioned American Sniper.
Yes, you did.
Those set of movies of highly armed Rambo Terminators, and they go out, and you can even go even further back to some of the Clint Eastwood movies where it's like I'm getting vengeance. Yeah. By the way, even in the old Clint Eastwood movies, they were like they killed their families or something, and now they're gonna not follow the law and get even with the bad guys. Even that made a little more sense. You get into this kind of, like I said, the video games, the Rambo stuff, and our country is just inundated with that stuff. And, I said, a lot of us, I'm 70, when we grew up, we had at least we went to, the Sunday school and right from wrong. And Jesus said, love your neighbor. And we had Desmond Tutu. Yeah. Desmond Tutu came here once and said, it's all about love and whatever. Well, this thing gets ripped out at a certain point when we're barraged with messages of hate the Venezuelans, hate the Russians, hate the Iraqis, the Yemenis. I mean, I don't even know. The moral conscience in the United States is really under challenge. We are really challenged to get back a sense of moral conscience. Our leaders in the past have tried to tell people not to go on this route, and we have sunk into a big rabbit hole. I just hope that people that are close to Trump can warn him to come on. This isn't the answer here. Making it worse. Making it worse is not the answer. Saying that blacks colleges and professors who criticize and anybody, they're the problem. Are you kidding? Our problem is the polarization between different groups right now. Let's not make it worse. It's very bad right now. Let's not make it worse. The mass shooters and killers out there, I should say idiots, like this guy who thinks shooting Charlie Kirk is going to somehow make things better. And you know what? He saw himself as Rambo. I'm going to say, that's a perfect thing. This is a guy somehow in his head, he starts to see, I'm a hero like Rambo. I can go up on a roof. I'm a good sniper. At the start, when you said, how could he have shot that well? He probably learned from his family because his father was in law enforcement. So he probably learned how to shoot.
Wait. Remember, corporate media says we don't want to talk about them. Now, they pathologize black families, but they won't profile a white one that produces this guy. Even though we still don't know if he really did it, because I'm like, wait a minute, if he took that shot, then I think you're right. You need to examine, what did you and your father do for fun? Because that was, Colleen, the last few minutes belong to you. Because
and I don't have a problem. My father was hunted every animal in Iowa. And my brothers were all taught with shotguns and rifles. You know what? My father probably would not be for assault rifle pistols. Why? They have you don't go out hunting with an assault pistol or a rifle. And so there's everything has been perverted.
Colleen, your father was trying to get dinner.
He was what?
Trying to get dinner. That's different.
Exactly. We in my family, we ate rabbits and pheasants and I think even turtles. I mean, my dad did. That's exactly. And Daniel Boone, he was Daniel Boone and there's nothing wrong with that. But that's probably how this young guy, who, by the way, does deserve the benefit of being presumed innocent is guilty. However, as a law enforcement officer, I think the evidence is overwhelmingly strong that that
he did it.
And you can't prevent the national security, the security complex, the security industrial complex. They're making a lot of money consulting and telling schools and stadiums and concerts, who have a lot of money, by the way. They make a lot of money. So they're hiring security to try to protect these places, even marathon running. You know what? Not possible. Not possible. I mean, I know people would like to think they can be protected in a public place when they go to a public event. You don't have to be on stage to be the speaker. Any public area right now, if we cannot rein in the mass incitement of mass violence right now, and copycat suicidal, homicidal behavior, if that cannot be reined in, There is no way. Now, they'll take a lot of money, but there is no good way. They can solve it, the crime, afterward by placing a lot of cameras in all different public venues. And that's what they're doing, just as we used to do to solve bank robberies by putting a camera over the teller window. You can solve it. You can't prevent it that way. There's not enough law enforcement. They would have to make law enforcement 100 or 1,000-fold in order to protect all of the public venues, the churches, the schools, the malls. I mean, there's no way. And if people want to believe that, that's a myth. That's a myth that they can be protected. It's not possible. And so I'm thinking that the only answer here is for people to get it, that we can't continue with this hate. Bondi said she wants to stop hate speech. Well, then, yes, Bondi, she's the attorney general. I agree. Stop the hate speech. People should. It's not like they should be jailed for it or threatened or lose their job, but they should stop. But she's one of the people that's part of it, that's doing it. The hypocrisy is incredible. Name calling and trying to make it into a polarized situation, which it's not. Mass violence, unfortunately, mass violence is bipartisan. That's the problem. Mass violence has long been a bipartisan problem. And whether it's shooting the Republican Congress people playing baseball or trying to shoot Trump. I mean, it's across the board. It's back and forth. It's bipartisan. It's nonpartisan. It's nonpartisan.
Absolutely. Well, what did H. Rap Brown say? Violence is as American as apple pie. Now, what we need to do, as Colleen Rowley is telling us, we need to have a change of mind. Change our thinking. We are but a thought away from living a very, very different kind of life. And we cannot fall for the propagation of this hate speech and of hate, whether it manifests itself in speech, physical contact, whatever it is. We're the ones who have the power to stop this, and we had better do it. Otherwise, we're not going to make it through, everybody. And you know what, Colleen Rowley, I will say this. I'm going to keep hope alive, because guess what? I know we can do it. I know we can. Colleen Rowley, everybody. People want you to run for office. They want you to run for sheriff here. So I know she's like, no. I cannot wait to have you back. Coming up, let's talk about the 300,000 plus jobs that Black women lost, everybody. That Black women lost. But guess what? White men gained more than 350,000 jobs. Did you know that? Oh, yeah, that's what happened. They got more than 350,000 jobs. So let's talk about that. We need to understand what is really going on here. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota.